What comes to mind when you think of Australia? Went on a camping holiday on a long weekend somewhere up north coast of NSW. It was packed and everyone on the site had a beer on the go before I even got up, like from 8 a.m. through the whole day. Everyone had a beer in their hand. I was just upset I didn't bring enough beers. I'm so happy this is an answer. I never used to love them. They were played a lot on the radio when I was a kid and you just kind of get sick of them and AC/DC, but I'm now in my late 30s and I appreciate them so much. I saw them once when I was 15 during the Redneck Wonderland era and I'm glad I've seen them. And Peter Garrett, what can you say? He sung about real issues, then joined the government to actually do something about it. He might not have fixed those issues, but he is the epitome of put up or shut up. Reminds me of when my mom was driving with 4 kids in the car and one showed up on the passenger side headrest. She pulled over and we all bailed out. Except for my then 2-year-old brother who was in his car seat on the left side with the spider. He screamed while we all stood around looking at each other say I'm not going back in there. That's delightful to hear because it may be the closest my family ever gets to travel. As an American who can't judge the authenticity of Bluey's Australia, the quality of the show lies in how honestly and accurately it depicts family life. I enjoy a lot of cartoons, but Bluey is pretty unique in the way it makes me feel seen as a parent. So, the ultimate magic of Bluey may be how well it shows us what we have in common no matter where we are in the world. That one video on BBC Planet, or what's the name of that nature channel, where they showed 5 males of different species fighting, protecting for their females. They showed how a young kangaroo male challenged another male for his harem. There is a moment when the older male kangaroo stands up and you see his massive muscles. Every time I see or remember that, it gives me shivers. I was more talking about the not even lackluster outright damaging climate response due to being in the pockets of the oil and mining companies, the increasing totalitarianism, arresting whistleblowers who expose them, etc. How much of that is down to idiots getting elected because they're endorsed by the Murdoch-owned shitrags? That's the real problem. Get rid of the Murdoch media empire, and you might do better. And you'd be doing the rest of the Anglosphere a favor to boot. It's so frustrating to see, because this would have been entirely avoidable had the federal government pulled their finger out their ass and actually come up with a comprehensive national plan to deal with COVID, instead of leaving the state governments to handle it themselves. That MF is the root of all evil. God, I hate that whole rhetoric. Street top the boats. No, we signed on the UN Declaration for the Status of Refugees. Granting asylum seekers refugee status is part of our identity and should be our legacy to the world. Then the government whinges about aging populations. We have able-bodied, young people waiting right there to become proud Aussies, but they're trapped because Parliament only wants to listen to the racist boomers. Grumpy and uptight border security, archaic bureaucratic systems, skin damage, lots of effort going into keeping up appearances, inhumane treatment of asylum seekers, messy politics around the COVID vax, biffing criminals over to NZ. On the other hand, fascinating Aboriginal culture and art. The castle, eucalyptus bush smells so good, golden beaches, kooky wildlife. The keeping up appearances one grates on me the most. I think my town suddenly got wealthier over the past decade since it seems every other person is driving the biggest SUV or the most pristine ute on the market. Sick of having to park between 4Ws too. Every house that sells gets knocked down and any sense of a yard around it gets paved over to make room for a house so big it goes to within a couple of feet of the property boundary on all sides, except for the back, which has to be converted to an entertainment area that'll get used for parties fucking twice before being left to rot. Yeah, that was worth cutting down those trees the previous owner planted 50 years ago for. Sorry, but when the average family in this country is smaller than ever, yet they're requesting and building bigger and bigger houses. It just reeks of keeping up appearances bullshit. Also, for some reason pit bulls are a status symbol. Like, yeah, your family is doing well, but are you doing pit bull well? I feel like we just jumped straight from trashy bogan house of hell to Karen City in the span of a decade, while totally bypassing the just being a normal, pleasant community stage in between. The only upside to all this is it's adding some significant value to my house. And part of being Australian is knowing that cashing in on property is your only chance at retirement for anyone who isn't already there, so maybe I shouldn't complain. Definitely agree with all points. Curious about what you're saying when it comes to lots of effort going into keeping up appearances. In some ways I agree, such as working in advertising or media in Sydney. I did experience that personally. However, appearances in general feel more relaxed than when I lived in Hong Kong and Korea. I lived on the Gold Coast for a while, so that's where my opinions are mostly formed. Seemed everyone needed the right car, ever new furniture, big house with the pool, women especially putting heaps onto their physical appearance. I haven't experienced Hong Kong or South Korea, but my baseline is NZ, so we're more laid back in that regard. Honestly, I live in a very expensive area in Melbourne and I own a business in another expensive area. And this isn't just the Gold Coast, I think it's everywhere. I come from a Maori family and we're pretty laid back, so I honestly don't give a shit, but I do own a fashion-based business. It's equally as bad here. They are a bit more gaudy on the Gold Coast, but here you need a Kathmandu jacket, highlights, a French bulldog, a $100K plus 4WD and lip filler to basically live. It's kind of gross. I had two harass me on the backyard today. One was on the Hills Hoister and the other was on my shoe, nibbling at my laces. To be fair, they were just reminding me I was in the yard and they were waiting on lunch. Simple trick. Feed them little bits of meat and fruit and they'll annoy you daily for 10 generations. Oh, also they won't swoop you. I had two harass me on the backyard today. One was on the Hills Hoister and the other was on my shoe, nibbling at my laces. To be fair, they were just reminding me I was in the yard and they were waiting on lunch. Simple trick. Feed them little bits of meat and fruit and they'll annoy you daily for 10 generations. Oh, also they won't swoop you. Do you fuck on first dates? Does your dad own a brewery? Could I feel your tits, or would you show 'em to me? Do you sleep in the nip? Do you give head very often? If we can decide your place or mine, we can fuck off then. So the next time you see a good-looking Sheila and you'd give a week's pay to hold her, don't sit acting dumb, just front her full on and drop a few lines that I told you this new method of mine might not work every time. But then again, no method will I've been spat at and slapped a need in the knackers, but then I've got a few fucks as well. Do you fuck on first dates? Does your dad own a brewery? Could I feel your tits, or would you show 'em to me? If the answer is no to me questions above, then be a good sport and give me the name of a girlfriend who does. Yeah, I was always more scared of these than redbacks, etc. A redback, I found them in dark corners and in the shed, places like that, but they build a web and seem to stay there. It always seemed like the whitetails move around more, they hide around the house and in clothes, etc. I found one in my bed once, and the potential for necrosis is just awful. Are we seriously discussing this? There are plenty of reports indicating a vast amount of war crimes, some of it not proven yet. Granted, but have faith. Proven so far as, for example, 39 murdered Afghan civilians with 25 soldiers involved, allegedly as an acceptance ritual called bloodying or bloodening or something, I don't remember exactly. A short Google search is all it takes. It's all available. In fact, it was all over the news time and again, and I'm not talking about that meme from the Chinese you referred to, but alone the fact that they published it was a hint how the rest of the world sees this. People are laid back here depending on where you go in Australia, and not always politically correct, give or take. I haven't been to the US, but I've been to Hong Kong, and Australia is definitely lower buildings, smaller roads, cleaner air, and people like to dress differently. While life is definitely diverse, birds everywhere around the cities, but if you want to see some others, you can go England, north or south. I'm sure like the US there's plenty to see. Yeah, there is definitely a lot of diverse wildlife in America, but not like you all have. Y'all definitely have something special over there. I always liked the idea of the outback. I was also always interested in the motorcycle culture over there as well. I feel like Australia has a similar culture to how we do here in the southern United States, but obviously each person is different. There was a level of culture shock. American wife moved here and not all of it was easy. Like brands, convenience easy to take for granted pretty much anywhere in America is not easily found in most or all of Australia really. And she's never gotten used to our sarcastic sense of humor. We are all rude and no amount of explaining it helps. We are a lot more blunt, but TBH we, generally, aren't rude. And a lot of our humor is self-deprecating or lame stereotype-based jokes. Just a few things. Yay, I can see that. I forget that Australia is pretty far away from Western countries, so imports are probably expensive and probably not worth it. And I guess it depends on the person if there will be culture shocked. I can kind of understand about the humor. I worked in construction for a few years and people definitely joke like that. People over here say it makes your skin thicker. If I had to choose though, I think I'd rather live in Australia rather than in Europe. I feel like it would suit my lifestyle better, but then again you never know until you know. A girl that I used to talk to from there, she was cool, but I'm married. I stopped talking to her and eventually I just blocked her because it didn't feel right. For the record, we never talked about anything inappropriate. Mostly the differences between Americans and Australians. Holidays, guns, politics, just random stuff. The wonderful people I interacted with on my business trips to Tasmania, the smell of eucalypts and the forests of man fern, wombats, echidnas, and wallabies, excellent oysters, fish, and near-perfect beef and wine, mountains with snowy caps and damn good whiskey. I have fond memories and I hope they open up soon. Okay, so, when I was in primary school, I was 9. My teacher decided that we learn about the Aboriginals. It was a great week. We got to learn a lot about the Australian natives. We even had didgeridoo music class constantly playing for the rest of the year. However, my teacher decided to also teach us about the myths and legends that came from the natives. I don't remember all the ones we did, but there is one that I remember vividly. Apart from the name, which makes me think my teacher made this one up, there's supposedly a creature that steals children in the dead of night, and to me looked a bit like a big black cat. But as a 9-year-old, this is the one thing that gave me multiple nightmares, and has stuck with me even now 10 years later. After the Hussars had come to the village in Rostov had gone to see the princess, a certain confusion and dissension had arisen among the crowd. Some of the peasants said that these new arrivals were Russians and might take it amiss that the mistress was being detained. Dren was of this opinion, but as soon as he expressed it, Karp and others attacked their ex-elder. "How many years have you been fattening on the commune?" Karp shouted at him, "It's all one to you. War and Peace 1730 of 2882. You'll dig up your pot of money and take it away with you. What does it matter to you whether our homes are ruined or not? We've been told to keep order, and that no one is to leave their homes or take away a single grain, and that's all about it," cried another. "It was your son's turn to be conscripted, but no fear, you begrudged your lump of a son." A little old man suddenly began attacking Dren, and so they took my Venkat to be shaved for a soldier. "But we all have to die. To be sure, we all have to die." "I'm not against the commune," said Dren. "That's it, not against it. You've filled your belly. The two tall peasants had their say. A family. My grandparents emigrated to Melbourne in the 50s together with a lot of their brothers and sisters. They went back to Italy in the 70s, but my father still has a lot of uncles, aunts and cousins there. We visited twice and are pretty close despite the long distance. I would love to live there one day. Soon to be unemployed. I work and live. FNQ. We rely on tourists. Prior to COVID, 65 to 70% of our clientele were international tourists. We managed to survive on Aussie tourists until the latest Delta hit. We now have no tourists. Nothing mudded. But we are one postcode out of getting worker or any assistance. Our lives depend on other postcodes. We are not eligible for any assistance, even though 85% of the country is locked down. We, being in a tourist town that relies on you motherfuckers to come up here on holiday, are being denied the same fucking courtesy of assistance than the rest of the country. How does that happen? That joint you want to go on holiday when this is all over will not exist, as there are no workers willing or able to survive anymore. The people. I feel Australia is the kind of place where if I was on the side of the road with my hood up, someone would pull over and help. They'd heckle me, call my car a pile of shit, probably call me an American cunt, fix my car with like, I don't know, a rubber band in a soda cap, insult me some more and then offer me a beer at their favorite pub. Dependable mates. Huge cunts. Rescuers Down Under. After that movie came out, I became obsessed with Australia. I wanted to go so bad. I read everything I could get my little kid hands on, and I remember entering a contest Lipton Tea was doing for a trip to Australia like 100 times. You had to mail in a postcard per entry. I've still never been, decades later. But my interest also faded quite a bit not long after. You know how kids are. Major sporting nation, cricket, rugby union, rugby league, Aussie rules, a good few F1 drivers, V8 supercars. There's almost nothing in the middle of the country. Lots of creepy insects, sometimes deadly. Soap operas that are more popular here in the UK, Neighbours, Home and Away. Beer that is more popular here in the UK, Foster's, Castlemaine XXXX, Dashcam Owners Australia videos. Can I get a fucking full-size render here? Holden and Ford cars, Commodore and Falcon. RIP to both. You guys are way more laid back and chilled out about stuff it seems. Fairly well-known cities, Melbourne, Adelaide, Sydney, Canberra, Perth and Brisbane. Edit the tag driver safety videos. Bush Telegraph blew my mind when I saw it on late-night TV here in the UK. Kangaroos, platypuses, some gay in a topless jeep covered in dust drinking a can of beer saying, "Good day mate," a group of blondes in one-piece bathing suits walking up the beach. But they got dropped off in the outback after a party the night before and the walk is going to be a 500-mile hike to the nearest rest stop. And they're wearing flip-flops, pretty much that. And Kylie Minogue. How I almost moved there. I'm from the USA. My dad had met this woman from Brisbane back in the .com era and they were getting acquainted. I'm not sure if my dad was super jumping the gun here because I'm not privy to the full details of that relationship, but he began making plans to move us, myself, my older sister and himself, to Brisbane. What's messed up was I was under the impression we were going to be moving to Canada. Because of the same reasons as above, but with another woman. I ended up in Canada. He married and then divorced her. Doctor, my dad was a Lothario and possibly playing two women and I think about how it could have led me to living there. All the incredible and rare creatures, including Nick Cave and Josh Thomas, and along with their names, Some of the most chilling songs and some of the warmest portrayals of communication between different generations and loved ones with mental health struggles. Also the vastness of it. The weekend I spent trying to make a homemade Australian flag with my son. It was a requirement for his 8th grade global studies class. Each student picked a country to study in depth. Halfway in, I remember thinking, Jesus, why didn't he pick Japan? Sharks, coral reef, heat, dust, reddish sand, kangaroos, enormous deadly spiders, deadly plants, catastrophic farming practices, laid-back people, beer, mates, big brimmed hats with one side snapped up, no note for the cuisine,